I'm going to say something that might get me in a lot of trouble here. Welcome to Fringe Element here on the 440 Sports Network. My name is Braden Gall, and you can follow me on Twitter at Braden Gall.
Mine's Erin Dugan. You can follow me on Twitter at the Erin Dugan or Instagram Erin_Dugan.
There you have it. Travis Reier from BamaOnline.com. I've known this man for almost 17, 18 years.
That's a lot. He was at Rivals.
Years
to know you.
He was, well, we never actually I think we've met like twice. So just stay away from me like long stretches of time. You'll be fine. So Travis Reier from BamaOnline.com going to join us. Tell us what the hell's going on with the coordinator search. Of course, Alabama turned down by Ryan Grubb, the offensive coordinator at Washington. And I've got lots of juicy details about this coordinator search. I've done some digging, but I'm not going to give that to you until after the interview at the very, very end. So I've got a couple of nuggets I'm going to save for all you wonderful folks who commit to the product and go all the way to the end of each episode to hear Erin always get the last word.
Fast forward and die.
On every single episode.
You gotta not tell them where it is in the episode. Just tell them it's somewhere.
It's later on. You got to go check it out. Just listen to the whole freaking show. It's a good show. I think we do a good show. So Travis Reier going to tell us about this Bama roster, the quarterback battle, which is going to be a big theme of the show today between Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson. Of course, he's got some ideas on that as well. What the offense is going to look like, how good this team could be, and again, were they 2 plays away from being undefeated good, or were they like 4 plays away from being 4-loss bad? We don't know, and Travis is going to tell us. So Travis Reier, Bama Online, coming up in just a little while. I believe 24/7 Sports now as part of that network. We also have to get to we're going to get to quarterback battles around the league. Just sort of a general first look at what could be taking place in spring practice over the course of the next few months for SEC teams. Obviously, National Signing Day this week, but we'll look at the rosters and how everybody recruited next week when all the dust settles. But we'll start with this Stetson Bennett stuff, and I guess we have to address it. I'm glad that we didn't have to address it like earlier in the week, Erin. Right. I'm glad I had some time to think about this before everybody.
Are you really that distraught about it?
Loses their mind. No, not at all. But we'll get to that in a second. However, Fringe Element is a podcast about SEC football, and it is brought to you by.
It's brought to you by J.E. Dunn. The golden nugget of workplaces.
The golden goose.
The golden ticket.
The golden ticket, goose, and nugget of workplaces in the United States.
I now have 2 friends that are currently in the application process at J.E. Dunn. Because they both hated their jobs, and they didn't want to hate their jobs anymore.
Let's not use their names.
No, I won't. Because then they're going to realize that we sent them, and they're going to be like, let's send this person through an extra interview because of the crowd they keep.
And what happened? Well, I'm more worried about like what happens if they decide maybe, hey, this is not what I want to do, or Jay Dunn says, hey, you're not qualified. Not that you wouldn't have friends that weren't qualified, and then they have to go back to their old jobs after telling everybody on our show that they hate them. That's what I'm worried about. We want to change the names to protect all of the parties involved. Everybody.
Change the names to protect the guilty. Yeah.
Including our own asses, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great place to work. They have jobs all across the country. So if you want to change jobs and you want to change cities, you can do that. Or you can change jobs probably without changing cities, unless you live in the absolute middle of nowhere.
I'm trying to think. Gadsden. Do they have an office in Gadsden, Alabama?
I can tell you because their website's extremely user friendly.
Do they have? Here's a couple
That's
of deep.
How you know if a website's easy to use. If you can get something during a podcast recording quickly without someone else having to talk to themselves for forever, you know the website's easy to use.
Here for you, because we know we got some listeners in Texas, and for you Texas folk, is there an office in Lufkin, Texas?
You're just saying all the most random cities in Texas.
Is there an office in Madisonville, Texas?
Here we go. I can tell you.
Is there an office in Savannah, Tennessee?
I don't believe there's one in Savannah, Tennessee.
Is there an office in Walla Walla, Washington?
Is that for real?
Is there an office in Frostproof, Florida? I can keep going.
I wish you.
These are all real places.
Well, I was trying to research these specific cities.
Every single one, real place.
I'll let you know about Gadsden later in the show.
Yeah, you can't go from Chattanooga to Birmingham without going right through Gadsden. I think the home of...
there's even a map that tells you how many jobs are available in what city.
Very interactive. Very
wow.
interactive. I believe Dre Kirkpatrick, 5-star corner out of Gadsden, Alabama. I'm not sure. We'll see. We'll see. I have to use the internet for that one. Okay. Real quickly here. I guess this was 6 a.m. Sunday morning. Stetson Bennett is arrested for public intoxication. Go JDDunn.com, by the way. JDunn.com. Great place to work. Stetson Bennett is arrested. And I know the internet's a bad place to get your opinions. I totally understand this, and I get this.
It's a fair sentence, I think.
Not podcasts. Podcasts are great places to get your opinion. And basically, the overreactions. Like here's I don't know even know where to start this.
Okay.
my opinion on Stetson Bennett being drunk and publicly intoxicated and arrested and spending like 5 hours in a drunk tank at 25 years old after winning 2 national championships and graduating like multiple times. I think he has like 5 college degrees. I don't know. Like my opinion is that I don't have an opinion.
Like I could not be less fazed by it.
My opinion is I don't care. And if every single...
as he wasn't driving, so I don't care.
Well, it's so funny. It's so funny. The actual take here is like, thank God he's smart enough not to drive. Like that. Yeah. That is the take.
It is.
Like literally the Tennessee Titans here in Nashville. The Tennessee Titans offensive coordinator was arrested for DUI after beating the Packers on a Thursday night football game this year.
So was the Tennessee Secretary of State that signed my business license.
Yes, mine too. And he was coming back from Bonnaroo.
Sorry, Trey Hargett. That was bad. I shouldn't call him out. It's too late.
Haggerty. Listen, like if we were all judged on the worst or best moments of our lives, none of us would have jobs. If you think an NFL general manager, because he's like projected, like fringe, maybe best case scenario 3rd round pick, probably more like a 6th or 7th round pick. Maybe he creeps into the 4th or 5th round. And I've talked to a few talent evaluators that think, he's going to get drafted, but he's not going to get drafted as highly as, 2 national championship rings and the efficiency metrics and all the other stuff. Right. If you're an NFL general manager and that affects your decision to draft him or not, then you probably just didn't think that highly of him as a prospect. I don't know how this is going to influence anything that you decide as an NFL GM in the draft.
It wouldn't. And the only thing, there are very, very few things that make anyone that's related to the NFL think about anything besides money. And that's just not poignant enough of an incident to change someone's mind if they feel like it's the right fiscal win-loss decision for their organization. It's just not. Now, teams do change what they're going to do based on people's criminal history, but a public intox for Stetson Bennett without any real victims, and he didn't drive, is just not going to be enough.
Yeah, the NFL is meritocracy. It's about wins and losses. And if you thought before public intox Stetson Bennett could be good enough to make your team as a backup quarterback, I don't know how post public intox Stetson Bennett isn't. I don't see the difference. It's all like having an opinion. Oh, NFL general managers aren't going to like him now. His decision making.
You don't know anything about the NFL if you think that.
Those opinions were those opinions got old so fast. It's as bad as like the TCU defensive tackling jokes. Like, because the cops tackled him. And the joke, of course, instantly was, look, the Dallas-Fort Worth Police Department can tackle Stetson Bennett, but TCU can't, which, of course, is located in Dallas-Fort Worth. So I like that.
That's pretty funny.
That joke, but it was funny for like half a second, and then it wasn't funny anymore. And your opinion should be, well, 25-year-olds who have the entire world by the short and curlies are going to celebrate every now and then. Don't make dumb decisions. Now, should he be knocking on doors?
That's
probably
the only
not.
Part where you're like,
probably not.
That's pretty invasive.
But maybe he's just trying to find where he was staying. I don't know. He's probably walking through the Highland, the Dallas Country Club. He's probably in the fanciest neighborhood in Dallas. So
I'm gonna give him a pass. That's my final answer.
I'm going to say something that might get me in a lot of trouble here.
Oh, yikes.
So my family, my in-laws, my cousin-in-law had a rehearsal dinner at the Dallas Country Club, which is like in the Highland Park area, I believe,
Okay.
which is like the nicest neighborhood in Dallas. And the Dallas Country Club is not, it's like the Dallas Country Club. That's the name.
That's like the name of it.
Yeah.
It's not a Dallas Country Club.
My significant other may or may not have needed the Uber to pull over on the way home from said rehearsal dinner in the middle of the Highland Park neighborhood to let's just say make herself feel better. How about that? On her birthday.
I highly doubt Haley signs up to hear your voice any extra than she does in real life. So I'm assuming she's probably not going to hear this.
She doesn't listen.
But if she did, I don't know. Just bless her. Let's move on.
Yeah, my wife did something stupid out of an Uber in the Highland Park neighborhood, which is where Stetson Bennett did something stupid. So again, a wonderful mother of two who is a perfectly wonderful, awesome, successful, kind, loving, caring, exceptional human being can also sometimes perhaps overserve themselves in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. That's all I'm saying.
And this is, again, coming from the guy who tore a hamstring whiskey drunk. Not I wasn't. No.
It was. We hadn't gotten to the whiskey yet.
There's no way you did. Oh, you did that sober? That's worse.
No. There was a lot of champagne. There was like 5 or 6. Okay. There's like 6 or 7 bottles of champagne with like
I'm
5
over
couples.
Your technicalities.
Well, champagne makes you like happy drunk. Whiskey makes you angry drunk. There's difference there. Either way, Stetson Bennett getting drunk, not a story.
Not a story.
My wife vomiting out of an Uber, definitely a story.
You're gonna double down and do that again. Okay.
All right. Okay. Quarterback battles. Travis Reier coming up. He's going to give us some insight into the Alabama battle, but this is a big one here. So we'll go kind of piece by piece. I'm just curious first, though.
What order are we going in?
Well, here's what I'm going to ask you. How many are decided in your mind? How many teams do you think are just like, there's no battle at all? There's no conversation.
No battle at all, or do I think it's decided?
No battle at all. It's decided. Whatever that, I don't know. Whatever that means. Just that, like, you don't even think of it as a thing that is worthy of being discussed. It's just settled science at this point in the SEC.
How many are that? Okay, let's see. I got to count.
I got at least 5
that are settled. No question.
I think so. There's definitely 4. And maybe even more. There could be like almost 8, but I want to know what you think.
I'd say
this is great podcast.
4. Well, you know what? You didn't tell me I was gonna have to count.
But you're a big calculus guy.
I'm
quantum
not a guy.
You're a big quantum physics.
I'm also
guy.
Not a guy.
Yeah, but you say whatever.
I know.
You use the phrase.
I get it. I think I've got 4. I didn't actually I haven't
which
all of them, but I had which 4?
Which 4 are not even they're not even up for debate. Settled science.
Let's see. I mean, maybe this isn't the most straightforward one, but I still think Carson Beck is the one.
No. In the entire SEC, which teams are not there's no battle. There's no battle at all. Arkansas, not a quarterback battle. KJ Jefferson is the starter. Not a battle.
Right.
Mississippi State, Will Rogers, not a battle.
And some of them are not Spencer Rattler or South Carolina.
Spencer Rattler, not a battle.
I mean, I don't think Vanderbilt has a lot of options.
I've got him down here. AJ Swan, not a battle.
Not a battle. Is that 4?
That's 4. That's 4. I got one more, and then I've got like 3 almost settled. So Kentucky, Devin Leary, done.
Okay.
I don't think there's a battle there. Here's the 3 interesting ones that are probably settled. And
LSU.
LSU, I think, is probably settled.
But could skew between Braden and Daniels.
If Garrett Nussmeier has an extraordinary offseason, spring camp, summer camp, could he challenge for some time with Jaden Daniels? Maybe. Mm-hmm. Unlikely, but maybe.
Yeah.
Texas A&M. I talked to somebody in College Station today, and I said, what % chance is that Connor Wigman is not the starting quarterback for Texas A&M? Is there anybody like Max Johnson, anybody else involved in this? And they were like, no.
Okay.
No
I'm
chance
not
that he's
shocked
not.
by that.
So almost settled science, but not quite. And here's the last one. Tennessee, I believe, is basically settled with Joe Milton. However, it would be a really good sign for Tennessee if Nico Iamaleava, the true freshman 5-star #1 player in America, actually unseats him during spring or summer ball. That would actually be, I think, a sign of that he is just that great and that you can't keep him off the field.
Yeah, that one to me was just a matter of time, of how much time, not necessarily it's inevitable, but that is there enough time for if Nico does have enough talent, can he do it? He just needed time to prove it.
I just don't think I don't think a true freshman is ever.
That's
Tim Tebow didn't start as a true freshman.
Yeah. You just the ability to not simulate, or the inability to simulate what's happening in a SEC game environment, specifically Neyland. I mean,
well,
you need time.
Tua didn't start as a true freshman. I don't think Bryce Young started as a true freshman. I don't believe.
This would be a different conversation if he had a year of SEC play under his belt, potentially,
or even just a redshirt year. Like again, Tua got a lot of reps as a backup. I think he threw for like 200 yards against Vanderbilt in Nashville.
Yeah,
as a backup. Here, the other one that's interesting is Auburn. Auburn might by default. I was
going to bring that up.
It might by default already be over. You know,
could be. I mean, we talked a little bit about Auburn last week, but why are you saying that?
Because I don't think Holden Geriner like fits into Hugh Freeze's system. There's no real other players on the roster. They tried like hell to go out and get quarterbacks, but Robbie Ashford's the only one left, really. And he showed some signs of life, some dynamic ability to run and throw with the football down the stretch last year on a bad Auburn team that was kind of crumbling around him. So I think that one feels like it's settled. I also feel like there could be an addition to Auburn, like at another time of the year. There could just like all of a sudden in June, we're gonna be like, oh, this guy's now at Auburn, or July, this guy's transferred into Auburn, and all of a sudden like there's a quarterback battle.
You don't have someone in mind for that?
No, not specifically. I think Hugh Freeze would take a concrete block right now to put into the competition.
Yeah, I agree.
He was trying everything.
We talked a little bit about Robbie Ashford. Was that last week?
A little bit.
And I mean, keep in mind, I mean, Tank Bigsby, God, I can't talk today. Was a very powerful weapon for Auburn, and because there were a lot of things crumbling, like you just referenced, Braden, keeping the ball in the secure hands of someone like Tank made, was kind of a default for Auburn, with everything going on in their system. But Robbie Ashford has the mentality to do. His head is where it would need to be, I think, to become a great SEC quarterback. He's going to need a little bit more time and probably some more weapons, a little bit of a stronger offensive, system around him.
I do think he just kind of fits. Like I think he fits into that system. I think it's what Hugh Freeze wants from an athlete. He clearly is wanting to acquire other options.
Right.
But I don't think that there's anything. I don't know. I think that he fits into what Hugh Freeze wants to do.
Yeah.
And I think that means Auburn at least is starting at a baseline of somebody that's not only been there, knows the roster, knows the campus, knows the community, but has like a baseline of like a certain like pretty solid level of talent. Like this is not a nobody. This is not a scrub. Like this is a guy that's got great athleticism, a pretty live arm, and he could fit into the system pretty well. So I think you're starting off, if you're Auburn and you end up with Robbie Ashford, I don't think you're like super disappointed by that.
I don't think so either.
The other one that's really interesting to me is Missouri. And this Brady Cook, of course, started the entire season. They get to a bowl game with him, throws for almost 3,000 yards. Wasn't exactly elite, but he's also injured, and he is out for the spring. And here's another one. Today, I have been told by someone in and around the program that they would love Sam Horn to step up and win the job. How about that?
Really? Did they give you a reason about stuff that they've seen that we haven't as to why that would be the case?
He's a much higher upside player, 4-star kid, 2-sport star, baseball, football player, just a great athlete. I mean, he was a much higher rated recruit. Like the ceiling is much higher with Sam Horn. So I think the key is that Horn and the other kid, Garcia, they're going to compete in the spring because Brady Cook is out, and they're going to battle it out throughout the course of the year in the offseason until Brady Cook comes back. And then it could just be an open competition at that point. Or if neither one proves it, then Brady Cook slides right back into the starting role. So I was interested by the commentary coming out of Como. I thought that was interesting.
Do you think that the rest of that Missouri is in a place where, because the quarterback switching around, same thing not the same thing we talk about in the offseason, but people coming back from injury or people coming in late for other reasons, like sometimes that works best if an offense is already somewhat established and you can give a little room for not necessarily error, but also for changes to be made and like the playbook to be built around somebody. Do you think the rest of Missouri is heading in a direction where they can support that kind of switching?
Well, I think there are some nice pieces there for Missouri. Obviously, Dominic Lovett transfers to Georgia, one of the top receiver prospects that transferred in the entire portal. Luther Burden's there, the 5-star. They still got some nice stuff. Like, they got some pieces there to work with on offense. But I think, don't you always want the young upside like prospect to win the job? Like, isn't that sort of? If all things are considered equal, right?
Yeah, I think for the longevity of like being able to build something around them. It's a good story for the onlooker, but it's also good for the program because you actually get some stability that you can, use for more than a year or two.
And worst case, you've got a backup who started the entire season, led you to a bowl game, and played like even the year before that a tiny little bit. So it's not a bad situation. It's a good situation, I think, for Missouri. Obviously, the defense took major strides last year. The offense sort of needs to show that Eli is, that offensive guy that we talked about. The Florida Gators, by the way, J.E. Dunn, jedunn.com. Go check out J.E. Dunn. Great career opportunities. Check out the website right there. Click on the little button, careers, and check out all the wonderful and amazing places like Frostproof, Florida.
Did you look that up?
No, I didn't know. I told you that's a real place. That is.
But do you know that they have jobs there?
Oh no, I don't. No, I'm assuming J.E. Dunn. No, J.E. Dunn does not have jobs in Frostproof, Florida.
Yeah, so. I didn't think so. Well, don't mislead people.
I don't know how close Frostproof is to a major metropolitan area, so they might have a job within driving distance. Maybe if you want to live in Frostproof, Florida, and commute to a nice office and work for a company that loves you as much as you do, J.E. Dunn, jedunn.com.
Did you say Frostproof?
Frostproof, Florida. There you go. Which is hilarious, I think.
It's only 56 miles from Orlando.
So no.
Allegedly.
So not anywhere near any major metropolitan area. All right, speaking of Florida, so jedunn.com. So Graham Mertz, I think what's interesting is that Jack Miller, Graham Mertz, the two transfers, Mertz from Wisconsin, Miller from Ohio State, they're kind of similar. They're similar in size, similar in build, very dissimilar. Dissimilar. That's what I thought. Dissimilar in experience level. Mertz has started, 30 games almost at Wisconsin. His yards per attempt, touchdown interception ratio, yards per game has all gone up all 3 years of his career at Wisconsin. Played in a garbage offense that with no weapons, no good coordinating, like not designed to throw the football at all at Wisconsin. Miller, of course, from Ohio State, a nice player, has some nice size. I kind of think Mertz gets a bad rap in all of this because of the whole Jaden Rashada thing from last week. So I think Mertz is actually not these are both 4-star prospects for Florida. So it's not, I don't think it's as empty as people in Florida are complaining about right now.
Do you see them trying to add somebody else in that window
possible
after the spring?
It's possible. I do think, again, kind of like, if Robbie Ashford is your starter at Auburn, I don't think that's terrible. If Brady Cook is your starter at Missouri, I don't think that's terrible. And I think if Graham Mertz is your starter at Florida, I don't think that's terrible.
Yeah.
I think you could do a lot worse in college football than those three guys at those three places, all of which have large pluses and maybe not as much upside as some of these other guys we're about to talk about with like Georgia. or whatever.
Right.
But like Florida, Missouri aren't and Auburn haven't stockpiled 5-star quarterbacks, which is partly why there's a new coach in Florida and Auburn. But that's neither here nor there. Ole Miss we talked a lot about last week. I don't know if we need to rehash the Ole Miss situation.
And we could maybe mention it, but we did go into we went into a lot of detail last week.
Jackson Dart, Spencer Sanders, Walker Howard, all pretty good options for Lane. And it's supposed to be an open competition. So I told you last week, hot take, Walker Howard could start. Watch out.
Yeah, I mean, just that not only is there a difference sometimes with the experience that SEC players have in terms of the size of the linemen that they're like going up against, like the speed of like some of the guys, just a lot of different factors, but just having a familiarity and having played a team before, a program before, coming from somewhere like LSU, there is an upside to just knowing what the different environments are like. And even if you haven't taken a bunch of snaps during the game, just to have been there before, it does help. Not to say that Oklahoma isn't, and where Spencer Sanders is coming from isn't a crazy environment, but it's not LSU.
No, but Sanders has started 43 games. Howard started
a lot of experience. I'm just saying in general, if someone had come from LSU, like a SEC school, to have the experience as someone who played in a different conference, like there is an advantage to that.
No question. And Dart started most of last year for Ole Miss, so he's got a leg up in terms of knowledge of the system and everything. So that is still like, it almost never fails that just Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin is going to be super, super interesting. If not for the fact that the two premier programs that have dominated college football for basically the better part of the last, I don't know how long. I mean, if you throw in Clemson, it's basically Georgia, Alabama, and Clemson have dominated college football for the better part of 10 years. And both Georgia and Bama, who both could be the favorites to win both divisions, I would argue when SEC Media Days is here in Nashville this summer, by the way, I would bet that like they're both going to be picked to win the division, and they're both going to have wide open quarterback battles. Now, we will talk about Travis Reier is going to hint at and allude to a singular thing about Alabama, and that is the ability to attack the field vertically down the field with the passing game. Does Jalen Milroe give them that? Is he so athletic and so solid around the line of scrimmage and in the short passing game that they don't need that? Otherwise, my conversation with Travis that you're going to hear here in a minute, it screams Ty Simpson in my opinion. But that's just my projecting right now.
So
in the middle of January.
That so we don't spoil it?
Well, I don't know. What do you think? Like, Milroe's the guy who played last year and won them the Arkansas game, won them the A&M game. He's a very dynamic player, big arm. Simpson, I think the 5-star is just a little bit maybe more accurate down the field.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with you in the sense that the accuracy factor, I think, is huge for Alabama going into this season, as we saw not only on the offensive side of the ball, but on both sides, a lot more. It's relative sloppiness, but it is sloppier than what we're used to seeing from Nick Saban and the Tide. So I do think that accuracy and trying to eliminate some of those mistakes, and when I say mistakes too, I'm not just talking about accuracy from quarterback position. I'm really talking about, and obviously you lost Bryce Young, but I'm talking about penalties. Just all around, Alabama's game wasn't as clean as it traditionally is.
Yep.
So for that reason, amongst several others, but I do think the accuracy factor does give Ty Simpson, like, I wouldn't say a leg up, but definitely a fighting chance for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really fun and interesting battle. And again, Bama's closer to LSU in the preseason projections than Georgia will be to Tennessee or anybody else in the East. So a much bigger decision, I think, for Bama, and not as many options with Milroe and Simpson versus Georgia, who's got, again, like the entire lax bros of Johns Hopkins competing for the starting job. Carson Beck, Brock Vandegrift, Gunnar Stockton. I guess what's interesting about that, Erin, is I would assume, don't you think, if we get into camp and it's settled who's number one, who's number two, or at least who's the top two, I would not be surprised if one of these guys transfers out over the course of the next 6 months, right?
Yeah, you cut out for like just a second. Are you still talking about Alabama?
No. I'm on to Georgia, man.
That's what I thought. I thought I lost something there because you cut out for a second.
Carson, Brock, and Gunner.
God, so basic.
Along with Stetson.
What are the female equivalents to those names?
Karen.
No,
Susan.
This is like. No, you're thinking like.
Oh. So like
those are too old.
Like Tiffany.
Yeah, like Tiffany, Kristen.
Tiffany. I'm not gonna say Kristen. Love you, sister. Love you, sister-in-law.
Oh, sorry, Kristen.
No, Tiffany's a good one. Tiffany's all I got.
Okay, that's fine. That's enough.
Give me two other Tiffany's.
Tiffany.
I mean, is Ashley's too mainstream of a name?
Yeah,
right?
I would say like Tiffany, Kirsten. My crazy college.
Is Kimberly?
Coach.
Is Kimberly there?
Kimberly could be. I feel like Kimberly's lost some basicness over the years, and maybe like, God, I don't know. I'll come up with something.
You just don't get the same, like, girls' names don't get the same like broy attachment. The only thing that gets attached to a girl's name, in my opinion, is stripper. And like if you name your daughter Cinnamon, if you name your daughter Bubbles, if you name your daughter like a food,
Roxy.
I think there's a good chance that she's going to get judged.
Yeah.
Or if you name your kid,
don't name your kid Chastity. You're setting the standard too high. They're going to rebel against you, and you know what it's going to look like.
Chastity's 1,000,000% right. But like if you name your kid Gunner, like he's going to get labeled as a bro. Like it's just going to happen. Yeah. And this is no knock on you, Gunner Stockton.
Brock.
Yeah, Brock's not. Gunner Stockton, the 4-star, 6'1", 220. Look at us transitioning right back into a quarterback battle. Brock Vandergriff, of course, the 5-star. This is his 3rd year in the program, probably the most mobile of the group. Carson Beck, though, it screams Carson Beck because this is a guy who, unlike most quarterbacks in college football, a highly touted kid who has sat in the program for 3 full seasons as a backup to other guys and has bided his time. Again, 6'4", more of a pocket passer, but like I guarantee you, he probably runs Todd Monken's system better than the other 2 guys, and he's kind of earned his shot. And I wouldn't be surprised if they won another national championship with Carson Beck. How about that?
Yeah, he definitely is more of the fits the traditional profile of someone that you think would fill that position at Georgia. Obviously, Stetson Bennett was not traditional, but worked out just fine for him. This is an interesting one just because they are all over the board in terms of experience and, being different from what Georgia's used the past 2 years to win national championships. I think there's a lot of promise with, I mean, Beck gets the job, right?
I mean, that's, again, if I was gambling, I would gamble on like Carson Beck, Ty Simpson, Jackson Dart, but there's, I think, again, Brady Cook would be the bet. Graham Mertz would be the bet. Robbie Ashford would be the bet. But like, there's no way that every one of these favorites wins the job. There's going to be an upset somewhere. So I don't know. Like that's.
I mean, yeah. I guess before we move on from Georgia, this is best case scenario to have somebody that physically fits the profile for them, that has when in a system that's already worked for somebody that wasn't traditional. And so this is where we start seeing, and this is not to say, I am not discrediting Stetson Bennett at all here, but Georgia's entering that phase of this system works and people are talented, people can be and should be talented at that position, but it's going to elevate the people that take that quarterback position because of the sound nature of the rest of the offense. You can kind of start to plug people in, and it's going to work better. It's what we think of when we think of Alabama, and that oftentimes that doesn't give those quarterbacks who have filled that position enough credit. But this could work with several different people.
Yeah, there's no question. And if a walk-on can win 2 national championships, then what would a 4 or 5-star do? With and again, I think to your point, with stability, like Todd Monken is the stability. Alabama doesn't even have stability right now.
Right.
Like they're trying to figure out what they're doing, and that's a perfect segue here.
And you've got a freshman coming in and to be the understudy of the program that already is really talented. So it's a good setup for Georgia.
Yeah. Oh, Georgia, good shape.
Yeah, they're going to be fun.
Georgia, good football program. All right, so that leads us right into what the hell's happening in Tuscaloosa. Travis Reier answered so many great questions, so I'll give you some feedback on that. And I got a couple of nuggets for you, but not until after the interview. So here was our conversation with Bama Online. That's from 24/7 Sports. This is my conversation with Travis Reier. Travis, welcome to the show, man. Great to see you. How are you, sir?
I am great. How are you, Braden?
I'm doing well. Before we get into some of the details and Nick's hiring process is the process, always a big part of any Alabama conversation. I'm curious, like, it seems like the two stories that you can tell about last year's Alabama team were that Bryce Young got them out of a lot of trouble and they could have lost 3 or 4 other games and they weren't as good as a normal Alabama team, sort of measured against itself, which is what Nick does every day of his life, basically. But there's also this other story that is they're 2 plays away literally from being in the SEC championship game and undefeated. Where do you think reality is? Like, what is the true story of last year's team with those two sort of ends of the spectrum?
I tend to go with you are what your record says you are. And so whereas you can go on either side, as you outlined there, Braden, and you can talk about the 2 1-point losses to 2 good teams. Tennessee really good with Hendon Hooker, obviously, and Joe Milton. They weren't bad either in the Orange Bowl. But, at the end of the day, LSU was a 4-loss team. So you can kind of argue that wasn't one of those teams in the past that has beaten Alabama, right? You think about elite teams, although we've seen South Carolina creep up on Alabama, teams like that. It has happened. Ole Miss in 2014 and 15. I think it's in the middle. So in other words, I think they were who they were. I think they were a 10-2 team. I think you're absolutely right. They could have lost in Austin, could have lost to Texas A&M at home with its backup quarterback. And of course, Alabama was playing its as well. Went deep into the fourth quarter with Arkansas. So yeah, I would say they were a 10-2 team. That's essentially who they were.
How about that? A sound, rational, logical opinion about Alabama. How about that? The quarterback. I'm curious about the offense moving forward. Obviously, there's going to be a quarterback battle, so I'd like you to sort of handicap the quarterback battle to some degree. But also, is there a chance that they are better, sort of across the board on offense outside of quarterback? Like, are the wide receivers going to be better? The offensive line better? The running game better? Obviously, some of this depends on what the system looks like in terms of schematics, but is there a chance that the rest of the offense around the quarterback will actually improve in 2023?
I don't think they have a choice because they're not just going to roll the ball out with Jalen Milroe or Ty Simpson and say, go win 12, 13, 14 games for us like they were able to do with Bryce even this past season. They have to be not only on offense, they have to be much more complementary in what they do on offense. They got to run it to throw it. They got to throw it to run it. They can't just put it all on one guy. I don't think they can anyway. Maybe Milroe or Simpson will prove out to be that type of guy this year. I could see it more so maybe for that player in 2024. But when we're talking about 2023, I think they've got to be much more complimentary, not only on offense, but that was about as bad of a complimentary football team as Nick Saban's had. When you throw in special teams, defense, offense, think about the losses. The offense would pick it up maybe in the fourth quarter. Then the defense couldn't get off the field.
Right.
Then you had a breakdown in special teams in some games. It just didn't, it wasn't that typical Nick Saban, all 3 phases. You're not getting a break for 60 minutes. You could get a break or 2 with this team between the offense struggling for stretches or the defense giving up plays at critical times. So they've got to be, if they want to be back into the college football playoff discussion, I don't think they have any choice to be. And I think they can be. I think the running back position, even with Jahmyr Gibbs moving on, has a chance to be a real strength. Should be better at wide receiver because the guys you're bringing back were better at the end of 2022. Offensive line, J.C. Latham, probably a 3 and out. Another one of those guys at offensive tackle. Enough on the interior coming back. So I do think they have a chance again to across the board be better.
Do you have an early favorite at quarterback in your mind?
I really don't at this point. I think it's just going to depend on, again, how they want to go about it across the board with their offense. I think Nick is never going to look away from the potential for explosive plays. He loves them like every coach does. And so if there's one of these 2 guys that can throw the football in a way that can maximize what they have at wide receiver, that guy's probably going to have a leg up because I don't think he wants to go back to 2016. They made it to the national championship game with Jalen Hurts as a true freshman. They could run the hell out of the football, which was great. But then when they needed it, and look, Jalen still made a huge play in that game. People forget about it. The touchdown run there late before Deshaun goes the length of the field, that gets lost. So that's not to, bury Jalen, because he gave Alabama a chance to win that game late in the fourth quarter. But just as far as balance and being able to maximize personnel around the quarterback position, I think if it's even close in terms of athleticism and some of the other things, it's going to be the guy that they can access the full realm of the passing game with.
It sounds like Ty Simpson to me. So it's funny you mentioned that, because I think people forget that Jalen Hurts led them on a national championship game-winning drive. That would have been a game-winning drive on his resume for a national championship, if not for a spectacular drive by Deshaun. So the offense the last couple of seasons, 40+ points a game. I think they're 24 and 4th. Bill O'Brien. Pete Golding, the defense, they were top 20, top 3 in the SEC, top 5 in the nation this past year, but basically top 20 in every major category every year that he was there. They're going to replace a couple of guys on defense, but is there? I can't remember a situation, and maybe it's just the Alabama standard that Nick Saban has set, that those two guys just sort of quote unquote maybe weren't good enough for elite Bama status. What do you make of the coordinator shift? The coordinator, both of them leaving, is there more to it than what that meets the eye on these guys? Obviously the fans have mixed reviews on these guys as well. What happened with these two guys? Because the numbers are pretty good.
Yeah, you're right. Numbers wise, they're not bad. Pete came in, he was a co-defensive coordinator to Tosh Latoy in 2018. And from what you hear from people back then, he pretty much by the end of that season was having to be the play caller and handle those duties for Latoy. So 4 years technically, but really 5 if you include 2018 in that. And I think it was a good getting off point though for both these guys. I think with Bill O'Brien all along, it was probably a 2-year commitment, 2-year deal. I think he wanted to get back to the NFL. I think he would have had opportunities to be a head coach at the Power 5 level if he really wanted to pursue him, like Georgia Tech. He just, I don't think, had much of an interest in taking on that type of project. So, I think it's sensible. I guess the best way to describe it. I think both areas of that football team during the 2022 season came up short. I think that maybe Alabama offensively went into 2022 thinking, well, we got Bryce back. We added Jahmyr Gibbs. He's going to give us some explosiveness out of the backfield that we didn't have with Brian Robinson even. Got Jermaine Burton in here. So they thought, I think, that in the passing game, they wouldn't be all that much different than they were in 2021. They ended up being a little bit different for sure. So I think it's a good getting off point for both. I think, it's interesting. I think Patriots fans are thrilled that O'Brien's coming back, and Ole Miss fans were happy to get Golding. I think Alabama fans are fine with going different directions in their own right.
The very rare win for everybody in college football. So take us through Saban's hiring process. Certainly, Jeremy Pruitt is a name that we all know. He didn't burn any bridges there. There's certainly some NCAA issues, maybe some SEC issues with him being allowed back into the fold a little bit. Doesn't seem like that's a problem for Saban as much as it is for sort of outside forces. Will he be allowed to recruit? But sort of take us through the process here, because this is running a little bit longer, and I'm curious what you think about the decision making. Well, take us through Saban's process of making these moves, because he's had to do it basically every year for the last 10 years.
Yeah, I don't think it's similar to either what happens at some other places or what fans or people on the outside believe is how it goes down in a lot of ways. I think the last couple of days you've heard names mentioned, not only with the job, but the interview process, Ryan Grubb of Washington being among those. And so I think a lot of people hear that and go, well, that's the guy. But the reality is Nick brings in multiple guys, and it's not a process, from what I can gather in talking with some people who've been through it, maybe more from a positional perspective than the coordinator standpoint. But I got to think it's similar. You don't just go in and sit down in Nick's office for an hour and, kind of talk football or get up on a grease board or, those type of things. From what I understand, it's a day-long type of situation or close to it, where you are integrated into the staff to kind of get a feel for the vibe with you as a part of that group, the dynamic. And there's always going to be other factors in play. I mean, a guy like Ryan Grubb, if he's getting $2 million at Washington, which it appears he is per year, when we understood that his name was very much in play, that's where it got a little difficult to believe that this thing could push all the way through with him, because I just didn't envision Nick Saban paying an offensive coordinator in excess of $2 million a year. That was where a little bit of the falling. And look, it's good for both parties. Ryan Grubb, you may bring him in, and it may become clear that, yeah, we think you're great, Ryan, but this is the Alabama offense, and you're going to put your stroke on it. You're going to have your little brush here and there, but it's still going to be, from a fundamental aspect, the offense that Nick Saban wants in play. And I would totally understand any guy, especially an ascending candidate, thinking, I'm in a good spot. I got Michael Penix back at Washington. I think we'll be okay.
And on the defensive side, is there something to we're waiting to see what happens with Jeremy Pruitt? Or is it he's just still going through the process, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think, obviously, if Jeremy were available like he is and didn't have the baggage that he has right now, this would have been done. I think Jeremy Pruitt would have been the slam dunk choice, and he'd already be in place. Yeah. Obviously, it's not as easy as that. So I think they're working through some guys. We understand they've got multiple candidates for these openings expected to run through Tuscaloosa, since really, the recruiting window really closed Sunday night leading up to signing day. So it feels like you're seeing more of a rush here in these next few days as far as guys actually in the building for some of these jobs. So it's still unfolding. But there are always in-house candidates to consider too. I think Todd Grantham is legitimately one of those guys. The 3-time SEC defensive coordinator, Louisville too, you name it, Todd's been there.
Yeah, and all of those fan bases will tell you all about him. Hey, listen, but if Todd Grantham is your last place worst case
who else
scenario,
will tell you all about Todd Grantham? His accountant. Todd's done well.
Yes, he has.
You can be an analyst at Alabama when you sign that nice extension at Florida, and it goes straight down the drain, right?
Look, if your worst
pay you.
Yeah, if your worst possible case scenario is Todd Grantham, you're all right.
Yeah.
All right. In general, should LSU be favored in the West this year? That is going to be a debate we have on shows like this for the next 6 or 7 months. Who's the better team heading into 2023?
I was in on LSU this last season. I wasn't in on them to win the division, but I knew the kind of roster that was going to be in play and what Brian Kelly was putting together, and understanding that there's some semblance of stability between his ears. I figured year one could be a really solid year. I think they will be the favorite. I don't know if they truly are the favorite. I think there's a lot of cachet in a win over Alabama. And so just with that, a lot of people are going to say, well, they're the favorite. Well, what about the loss at Texas A&M late in the season? What about the 3 other losses on top of that? I don't think a lot of people will go that far with LSU. I will say again, though, from a roster perspective, just like I felt a year ago, if that's where you go with LSU and making them the favorite, I get that. If you look at Alabama and say, look, the game's in Tuscaloosa, that's the tiebreaker for me, I'm going with Alabama.
Yep.
There's a lot of ways you can look at that with those two teams. And, none of us are wrong in the preseason, because if we are, we don't really talk about it in the postseason. That's the beauty of it.
Hey, at being at Athlon Sports for 15 years, we have to talk about it all postseason long. There's no question about that. It's funny because the quarterback situation is a little bit more stable. I think the key for me, honestly, is that Brian Kelly is closer to Nick Saban than anything that anybody else really has in the division, and that anything LSU has had in the past, honestly.
Yeah, and this is also a textbook year for Jimbo to go 12-1 or something, because there's absolutely no expectations of the Aggies, and what roster they have left will still, if they can stay clear of injuries and other issues, they could still be there. And Lane is still going to have a quarterback, that, and he's going to have pieces on offense. But no, I agree. I trust Brian Kelly more, put it that way, than any other coach in the LSU in the SEC West, not named Nick Saban.
I do think you've covered this beat a long time. I do think that Nick Saban, like the demise of the Alabama dynasty has been written so many dozens of times, and it's been wrong every single time. And I still think it's going to be wrong this time. But with a big caveat being, again, you've been around this a long time. I don't think I've ever seen the collection of sort of the programs around Alabama in the SEC being as on solid footing as we've ever seen. Like the depth of this conference today, I think is better than I've ever seen it in 20 years of doing this, in my opinion.
Well, and that's before you consider that he gets Tennessee every year now. I mean, he nuked Tennessee right out the gate. In 2007, when Alabama and Tuscaloosa took care of Tennessee, and then the next year went up there, and that was it for Phil Fulmer and the Tennessee program for the next really 13 years. And now coming from the East every year, he knows he's going to have to deal with that.
Tennessee fans had something to do with that as well.
yeah, that's true.
And the people in charge.
yeah, intrepid. Yes. But no, I think you got to take that all into consideration. There's just not the gimmies, and give Nick a lot of credit for that. He created a lot of the gimmies, because when he came back into the league in 2007, it wasn't an easy place to get it done at that point. And he kind of made it that way for himself for the next 10 years or so.
Well, speaking of being wrong, I remember you and I back in like 2007 joking about the entirety of Nick Saban's tenure at Alabama, thinking, you know what, he'll be there for a year, maybe 2 years, if he even takes the job. And that was not what happened.
They got him at the right time. I mean, you think about it. He had been at LSU, had won a national championship, by all accounts, loved being at LSU, but had to do the NFL thing. So he gets that out of his system. He's not going back to LSU. Alabama, give the late Mal Moore, the former athletic director at Alabama, a lot of credit. He knew he had to make that hire, and he got it done. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah, the amount of things that could have changed the course of the entire, landscape of college football is really astonishing. And
how about Rich Rodriguez at Alabama instead of Nick Saban?
Right.
Now he's at Jacksonville State, just down the street.
Or if he signs Drew Brees instead of Dante Culpepper in Miami.
That medical. Don't ask Nick anytime about that medical staff with the Dolphins.
Right. Well, Travis, thank you so much, man. We do appreciate it. Always a pleasure. Nice catching up with you, man. And obviously, enjoy the offseason.
All right. Thanks, Braden. Appreciate it.
That was Travis Reier of BamaOnline.com, of course, from 24/7 Sports. I've known that guy a very long time. And I remember having a very distinct phone call with him where he called me in 2007, because I had been saying all along, like, no way Nick Saban comes to Alabama. And if he does, he's only going to be here for a couple of years. And he called me in like the day before he got announced, and he was like, Saban's coming to Tuscaloosa and he's going to be here a long time. And he has never let me forget that one. Big L on my part on that one. Wow. And I think, and before we get to a couple of nuggets on the coordinators, I think one of the interesting things he said there, because you and I have talked a lot about this, Erin, like, what is Alabama in 2022? What were they? They were a couple of plays away from losing 4 games, but a couple of plays away from being undefeated and playing in the SEC title game. So, like, what really are they? And I think Travis said it perfectly. Well, like, they are what their record says they are, which is 11-2. Like, not elite, but not bad at all. Pretty damn good.
Also, the fact that we're saying 11-2 is not elite is
right.
Crazy.
Right. For Bama standards, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's true. Like, they just were a very, very, very good team, close to elite, but they weren't. So
I think it would, for them to be the odds, I think, between the two scenarios you just presented, it would have been, I don't know, you can almost see them. I can't see that team having gone undefeated. I think they were closer to losing another game than they were to winning 2 more.
I think I could. That's the beauty of the argument, is that my head.
It is correct.
Right. Like, in my head, I have tried to convince myself, like, what is it? Were they 3 plays away from being a 4-loss team? Or they literally,
I know what you're saying.
Literally like 2 drop passes. If LSU's tight end, Jason Taylor's kid, just drops a 2-point conversion, Bama wins the game. If Jahmyr Gibbs doesn't drop the pass against Tennessee on like 2nd down or whatever that was, they're in field goal range and they make the field goal. Like, it is, they are literally 2 plays one way or 4 plays the other. and you try to convince yourself which one is it, and then you're like,
oh, they're a 2-loss team.
Oh, they're just a 2-loss team.
Yeah.
Right, because let's say the A&M play happens and they lose that game, but then they make the play against LSU. Well, we're right back where we started. We're a 2-loss team.
Well, and there were little mistakes like we just mentioned, like things that are sloppy on Alabama standards leading up to those, almost winning or losing a game that would have made the difference earlier in the game than, at the very, very, very end.
And Travis alluded to that as well. So, all right. Appreciate Travis Reier joining us there. Bama Online, of course, jedunn.com. All right. What you've all been waiting for. Here's what I can give you. I can't give you all the deets. I can't give you all the, what do they call it? The tea. I can't give you all the tea.
The tea.
As they say, as the kids say. Here's the best I can do, and I'll let you pry on this if you want.
Okay.
There's more to Pete Golding leaving Alabama than just football. How about that?
Oh. That's all you're going to...
That's all I'm going to give you.
Does it have to do with being... okay, just tell me, is it a direct one-to-one personality to personality, this isn't working?
No.
Is he in trouble?
Not really, no. Like not like
he hasn't been like...
Not like with the law or his wife.
Well, that's a good start for him.
He might have some personal issues he needs to work out.
Okay, so he's probably misbehaving, but he's still married and he's not in jail.
Well, no. So I'm already getting too close to comfort for this because it is not.
Don't abuse relationships.
Yeah.
I'll stop asking questions.
Let's just say, like, first of all, let's just say the lifestyle of head coaches and assistant coaches leads to self-destructive behavior. Let's just say that in general.
High stress too. So
and working for Nick Saban, I'm sure, is so easy. Working for Lane Kiffin, a little bit smoother and easier, but closer to Tunica. Anyway, all right.
Much closer.
So here's one for you. Here's another one. I think, and Travis already alluded to this, like to some degree, and I think this is out there, that Jeremy Pruitt would probably be the defensive coordinator already at Alabama, if not for X, Y, or Z potentially getting in the way, which could be the NCAA. It could be the SEC office Greg Sankey saying, I don't know about this. It could be, again, the NCAA. He's got a hearing or a trial or whatever with the NCAA coming up. It could be Nick Saban waiting to see what kind of show cause, if any, Jeremy Pruitt gets on this.
Yep.
He's also got a lot of other great options at both offensive and defensive coordinator. But that Pruitt is, that Pruitt is very much at the top of Nick Saban's list. I think is sort of what I can say. How about that?
Yep, that's fair. I won't push you anymore because
you kind of already got too much out of me.
Sorry.
But that's why you listen all the way to the end. You listen all the way to the end because Erin's going to get me to say some shit that I'm not supposed to say.
Yeah.
So there you go.
You don't get in trouble for that, but it's intriguing.
No, it's intriguing. All right. All right. We appreciate everybody for hanging out and listening. Subscribe, rate, review, all that good stuff. Go to jedunn.com and check out the website. If you want a great career opportunity, go check them out. Of course, the YouTube page as well. You can get to Erin where?
The Erin Dugan on Twitter and Erin_Dugan on Instagram.
There you go. Don't knock on doors when you're intoxicated at 6 a.m. in Dallas, Fort Worth, everybody. Just a small piece of advice. That's all we're going to say.
Universally true, that advice is.
In all cities, too, not just Dallas, Fort Worth, but in all cities, walking around inebriated at 6 a.m. knocking on doors, not always the best idea, just across the board. But still better idea than operating a vehicle.
Yes. So
in that situation, you can get to me at Braden Gall at 440 Sports and follow us on the Instagram at 440 Media. There you go.
Yep.
All those good places. Have a great weekend. Have a great weekend, everybody. We got some cool stuff planned for you guys, so don't go anywhere. We got lots of off-season content, lots of creative stuff coming your way. So again, the YouTube page, the social accounts, and share the podcast. We do appreciate it. For Erin, I'm Braden. Thanks for Travis hanging out as well. Thanks for listening. This has been Fringe Element here on the 440 Sports Network.
Bye. Okay, cool.